Welcome to Tala Mole Moe, a podcast show created to tell the tales of Oceania as bedtime stories. I am your host, Miyamoto Loretta Jensen, and tonight I am proud to present our first ever episode. Welcome to the first episode of the first season ever. This show has been a long time coming. I was first blessed with the idea of creating such a show about a year ago in March 2021 by my dear friend and soul sister, Michelle Franzoni Thorley, also known on Instagram as Flora Familiar. She knew that such a project needed to be made, and I full-heartedly agreed with her when she proposed it to me. And now we are where we are today. So before we dive into our story, we need to begin with an outline of what this show is, with a breakdown of who, what, when, where, and why. So, who am I and who is this show for? Well, my name is Miyamoto Loretta Jensen, but most people call me Mia for short. I am a professional genealogist, which means I help individuals and families connect to their ancestors. My specialty is in Polynesian family history, and you can find me on social media as the Polynesian Genealogist. My own background is Samoan, Tongan, Hawaiian, Japanese, Korean, German, French, Swedish, and English. I have so much pride in the work that I do, but my joy is most filled when I can spark happiness, healing, and relief in others as they learn more about their families. And when I've learned more about our people, I found that we have so many wonderful stories full of light and knowledge. Each offers lessons for all of us to learn. I heard many of these stories growing up as a child in Hawaii. I was blessed to be raised in my Hawaiian culture and to develop a strong sense of my identity within it. But now that I'm living away from the islands in the continental United States, I find myself often wishing that my little 5-year-old boy could have the cultural exposure as I did when I was a kid. Sadly, this is not going to happen for us anytime soon, but if I can't go to the islands, I had to find a way to bring the islands to me and to my family. Storytelling was a natural thing for me to do with my boy, so it seemed natural to have a podcast show based on stories. So, if you are like me, a parent who desperately wants to connect their keiki or their children to their cultures and ancestors, this show is for you. If you grew up away from the islands and wanted to learn more about our legends, this show is also for you too. The show can be a source of education for you as you strive to learn more about your Oceania ancestry. I hope you never ever feel like you are not enough in our culture. And if you are a child listening to this show, I hope you enjoy hearing the accounts of your family. I hope that when you hear these stories and think about your family, you have dreams about them. I hope your ancestors come to you and make you feel loved, welcomed, and connected. I dedicate this entire show to the rising generation. What can you expect from the show? My expectation is that you will come to the show ready to relax, listen, enjoy yourself, and learn. This is a stress-free environment. It may be stressful for me in preparing for each episode, but that stress should not come to you at all. When I think of a bedtime story, I think about them as ways to help me feel at ease. That's what I want for you too. The legends and the stories you may hear may be variations of what you may have heard as well, and that's okay. In the future for this show, I would love to cover all the different kinds of elements and details that belong to each story from every Oceanian culture, because to me they are all beautiful and inspiring. But for now, I will be focusing on stories that I have come across that are either in the public domain or were given to me by word of mouth. If in the future I have rights to other stories, that would be fantastic. But please understand that some of the details you may hear can differ from what you've heard and have known all your life. So, when will each episode come out? Well, I'm planning on an episode about a week, each episode a week, for 10 episodes per season. I'm working on getting these episodes out to you as quickly as possible. I'm a one woman show for now, so I will be doing my very best to get these out to you as soon as possible. And where can you listen to the show? I will be launching my shows on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I hope to launch more on different platforms in the future so that more people can listen to the show. And please feel free to listen to the show whenever you would like. But I will be speaking in these episodes with calmness to hopefully calm all of you down, me too, calm all of us down to be ready for sleep. So don't drive and listen to the show. Be safe, everybody. And lastly, why did I make this show? So at the beginning of this episode, I explained who this show is for and a bit of my why, but let me reiterate and elaborate. This show is for Oceanians. Oceanians are defined as people of the Pacific, or the Moana. I wanted this show to be a means for Moanans to connect back to the Moana, especially those in the diaspora. The diaspora is a group of people who are away from their ancestral homeland. Did you know that there are more Samoans living in Los Angeles than there are in American Samoa and Samoa combined? Yeah, that's a lot of Samoans. And I bet most of them have never been to Samoa. Me, as a Samoan, I haven't been to Samoa yet either. But of that group of Samoans in Los Angeles, there may be many who can't speak the language or who have never heard of the stories of our people or don't understand the culture. This show is meant for those who are wanting and trying to connect themselves, their children, brothers, sisters, cousins, aunties, uncles, grandmas, grandpas, whoever, back to their roots. This show is also for those who love Oceanian culture and wanted to get to know it better. And lastly, this show is for me. I always wanted to start a podcast show that literally has me practicing oral tradition just like my ancestors have done for generations. And I want this show to be a type of heirloom that my posterity can listen to. So, thank you again for joining me tonight. And the biggest shout outs go to my patrons on Patreon: Michelle Franzoni Thorley, Kate Meldow Cummings, Taylon Wilson, and Tania Kuntz. Thank you so much for helping me to make this show possible. And if you like what I'm doing here, follow and support me on Patreon at www.patreon.com/thepolynesiangenealogist. Tonight's story is called The Creation of Samoa. In the beginning, there were only the heavens and the waters covering the earth. The god Tongaloa looked down from his place in the sky and considered creating a place on the earth where he could stand. So he made a resting place by creating a rock called Manuatele, or Greater Manua. Tongaloa was pleased with his work and said it would be good to have another resting place. So he divided the rock Manuatele so he would have other places in the sea that would serve as stepping stones. From these pieces of rock, he created Savaii, Upolu, Tonga, Fiji, and the other islands of the Pacific. When Tongaloa had finished fashioning all of these islands, he returned to Samoa. He measured the distance between the islands of Savaii and Manua and found it to be too great. So he placed a rock halfway between and designated it as a place of repose for the chiefs. He called this last island Tutuila. Tongaloa then sent a sacred vine to spread over the rocks. The leaves of the sacred creeper fell off and decayed, and things like worms grew from them. Tongaloa saw that the creeper had given birth to worms that had neither heads, nor legs, nor breath of life. So the god came down and provided these worms with heads, legs, arms, and a beating heart. Thus the worms became men. Tongaloa took a male and a female and placed them on each of the islands that he had created. The man, Sa, and the woman, Vai, were placed on one island, and the place was called Savai. U and Bolu were placed on another, and it became known as Upolu. The couple, Tutu and Ila, were the first inhabitants of Tutuila. To and Ga went to a place that Tongaloa named Tonga, and Fi and Ti were placed on an island then named Fiti, or now Fiji. Then Tongaloa decided that men should be appointed to rule the different islands, and so he created the title of Tui, or king. He created the titles Tuiangae, Tuitau, Tuiofu, Tuilosenga, Tuiatua, Tuiaana, Tuitonga, and Tuifiti, and thus established the lords of the islands. Then Tongaloa looked upon all he had created and decided that there should be a king greater than all the others, and that he should reside in Manuatele, his first creation. He selected the son of Po, which means night, and Ao, which means day, to be the king of kings. When this boy was to be born, it was found that his abdomen, or his stomach, was firmly attached to his mother's womb. Because of this, he was given the name Satia Ile Moa Atoa, which means attached by the abdomen. And the whole island group that would be his domain received the name Samoa, which means sacred abdomen. When the child was born, he sustained a great wound as he was ripped from his mother's body. From this came the name of the place of his birth, Manuatele, which means the great wound. When this boy grew to manhood, he became king of all the Tui, or of all the kings, and carried the title Tui Manua Moa Atoa. Being born out of the Moa, or the center of the earth, was Sa, or sacred. And thus began the histories and stories of our ancestors from Samoa. The story of Samoa is a beautiful one, but what I love most about the story is the fashioning of different rocks to become homes of our ancestors, from those who lived on Savai, Upolu, Tutuila, Tonga, Fiji, and all the other Pacific islands. When my grandmother, Lawinga Tupuivao, left Tutuila Island to come to America, she was like Tongaloa and metaphorically took a piece of the rock where she was born and brought it with her to America. Lawinga ended up in Carson, Los Angeles, California, where she built her family and home from the ground up. She made sure that no matter who came across her and her home, they would know where she was from, that she came from Alao Village in American Samoa. She worked hard to provide for herself, her children, parents, and anyone else who ever needed help. Lawinga always had something to give that others would be blessed. Although she left American Samoa decades ago, her village, culture, and background never left her. She took a piece of Samoa with her wherever she went. My hope for you is that you may take your rock of your ancestral homelands with you wherever you go, and you make it beautiful. Make it your own, make it yourself, make your presence, your light, your love, let it all be part of this rock, and let it be a home for everyone that comes across you, so that when others do come and meet you, they know where you come from. There may be some of you who feel like you are not good enough to claim your ancestral homelands. You existing and being in this world is enough. You don't need to prove yourself in any way to belong. Where you and your ancestors come from can never be separated from you, no matter what anyone says. May you all have sweet dreams tonight. Thank you again for joining me. Manuia Lepo.